Okay, brilliant. So, first things first, if everyone can listen, I'm going to go through how this is going to run. You guys have been here for previous ones in the group, so I won't take too long. But we're going to start with a brief introduction within every candidate, so you know your name, your year, what course you're doing, your pronouns if you think that's relevant, etc. And then we're going to move on to the name round. Within the name round, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Each of you will have 1 minute to answer, followed by up to 2 challenges, and you can respond to each challenge 30 seconds. Once that's over, move on to the next one, and we continue. And we'll repeat this up until the end of the hour, and at the end you'll have closing statements. If any of you have any questions, but I think it's pretty straightforward, so we'll start with introductions, we'll just go down the line.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds right. I'm Emily. I'm in final year social policy student and I'm chair of the activities exec.
I'm Master's Chemist. I'm the arts liaison on several activities exec, and I'm also a second year society.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie Greenberg. I'm a second year biology student. I'm a peer mentor, academic rep, and I'm the social secretary for the Theatre Society.
Hi everyone, I'm Yetta. I'm a final year psychology student and I'm currently the chair of group team.
Hello, my name is Kenzie, second year accounting and finance. My experiences with the SU is food stock chair and executive director.
Please do use all microphones, you don't have to pass that all the way down. Okay, so let's start with the first question then. And the first question, pretty straightforward. With responsibility for over 160 student groups, how are you going to ensure that societies and student leaders are supported and listened to, with all opinions taken into equal account? And we'll just start with Emily.
Time to start straight away. We're going to go for this. So I'm just saying this because I am currently chair of the activities exec, but I think that's a really good student group we have because it's structured with liaisons with all the different group areas, and it means that you, well, ideally, you know who your liaison is within your student group, if you're a student leader, and can then just talk to them about it. So all types of groups are represented, and then that feeds back to the activities officer.
Does anyone want to challenge that, ask a question? Go on.
When you're saying like they can just contact the head of the section for the activities, what about those people who constantly have social anxiety? They don't want to contact someone they don't really know. Is there anyone that you would put below them so that it's easier to contact just one general person for complaints in general? So any idea you would put for people who are generally terrified of complaints?
I think if a student is experiencing issues within, so if it's within the activities, if they're a student leader or they're a society member, then there's already groups in place because they're part of that. In theory, they're part of that sort of support structure as a society member or as a committee member. So I suppose in an ideal scenario, if they didn't feel like they could come to someone they didn't know to ask these questions, then a committee member, a fellow member of society can reach out on their behalf.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you. Any other challenges on that front? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
So I think the best way to make sure everyone is taken into account and heard is unrealistically to try and actively spend time to listen to them. Obviously, as one activities officer of 160 groups, it is hard to do so. But I think one of the key things to do is keep our ear close to the ground and make sure everyone is consistently heard. As Emily said, we do have our activities exec, and those are a great point of contact. As the arts liaison, I've been contacting my ranks in the arts groups consistently throughout the term. But also, the committees of the societies themselves are also a great way to get feedback. Committees engage regularly with their groups, and they'll get feedback from their groups directly, and once again, insight for each other.
Brilliant. Any questions or challenges on that? Okay. How would you go about making feedback committees more accessible then? Committees. Two committees, direct committees.
To make it more accessible to committees. I think the visibility of feedback in and of itself is very much dependent on how much groups want to engage with it. Obviously, the more you put in, the more you get out. I think committees in general tend to be more active. Ensuring that as an activities officer, you're friendly and welcoming and always open to being communicated with. Like whenever I send an email to my arts groups, I'm consistently saying, email me back if you need something, is a key point so that they're aware they can come to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on then to Ali.
The student voice is very, very important to me, and being able to hear all of your feedback. This is why I would like to implement some kind of annual general meeting, an AGM, for societies to come and speak to the SU officers directly so that we can hear your feedback. The main point about this is that it would be in person so that we can directly ask you follow-up questions and make sure you get the support that you need.
Any challenges in that? Okay, so
How do you think you would go about organising an AGM, and also what kind of resources and how do you think it would work around as you start? And I guess facilities and stuff.
Yes, this is specifically an idea I have for student groups. So part of it would be, if obviously we have so many societies, we wouldn't be doing one large thing. I don't think we have a lecture hall big enough. But if we used a CB room and we did it one day for the art societies, one day for the agricultural, just so that all the student groups are in one room and they can hear the feedback that other societies are making and giving, so that they can make sure that their feedback is as well.
any further challenges? Okay, Yetta?
So, in terms of, obviously there are over 160 societies that activities would oversee, and I think apart from feedback and communicating properly with all of the activities, I think actually having equal visibility for all of these activities is also really important. There is sometimes a bit of an unequal push for certain groups that end up, maybe just because of the size of the group, end up being promoted a lot more by the SU or just by various sources. And I think actually making an active effort to make sure that all student groups are equally pushed, but also like the recognition is there for all societies will also make student leaders as well as the members feel more heard, but also more appreciated for their hard work, which can often feel like a part-time job in some ways.
Brilliant. Any challenges in that? Okay. Yetta, how do you plan to make less represented societies and student groups there?
I think firstly, just within the role, actually pushing for the SU itself, maybe it's SU marketing, to have sort of more of a calendar plan of some sorts where all societies, there aren't any that are missed. And that also comes down to some of the volunteering groups, which are huge in terms of the campaigns that they put out and events that they put out. And things like different months when it comes to, let's say, November or breast cancer awareness month.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off there. Any further challenges? Go on, Kinsey.
I'm not saying equal awareness, there are 160 societies. So if you're trying to introduce something like a calendar, what would happen if supposedly like for Christmas dinners, a lot of the societies would do it close to each other or maybe on the same day? How would you be able to prevent like a giant clash, a giant clump in the calendar where it's inevitable that a bunch of societies just get lost?
That's a fair point. I think it's very difficult to have equal visibility for every single event that societies put on. I think what I sort of would start with and what essentially what I'm getting at is that some of the bigger things that are going on within societies, maybe things like Christmas dinners, maybe getting into like slightly smaller things that everyone does, but yeah, focusing on potentially just some of the bigger things that societies are doing, some of the bigger initiatives.
Brilliant. And then Kingsley, your turn to answer the question.
I think I'm going for a slightly different approach to everyone here, in which, yes, like getting equal support and like, you know, their opinions told is wonderful, but I go in the direction of something equivalent to a form, which I know a lot of students do not fill. A lot of departments are saying, give us feedback, they barely reach like 20 to 30%. But it'd be nice if everyone got an email so they all have equal chances, anonymously or not, to provide a feedback. If they want something else, we could book a slot. But it's more like, in the beginning, we want everyone to be able to have a chance to speak, even if they're just too shy to, or if they just don't feel like coming to campus. If something happens, it would be nice to be able to like give them time and place.
Brilliant. Any challenges on that? Yeah, go on.
So you were pushing a form as a form of feedback, am I correct? Because it's like a low pressure way for students to engage with feedback. But I do understand the importance of that, but I do think it puts too much responsibility on the students in a way that the SU just has to send an email. We're not actively reaching out and engaging with these groups. It's just, here's a form, fill it out, and I don't really. I understand that it's less pressure if it's social anxiety concern.
If you just want to.
But how do you think that's being effective?
I mean, if you're going for the fact that it's a bit too lax on the SU side, my solution would be a bit more forceful than before, where it is up to the students themselves or like the community to reach out. But it could also be a thing where you start making it so that you keep pushing it. You're not just there static. You could push out things from marketing, from like all the SU different online pages. You could also start saying, hey, certain committee members have to have a mandatory filled out form. The members might not, but the committee would have to, as the fact they're a society, they're representing a larger group, and so their feedback would also be helpful. So I would make it like possible for them to happen.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the next question here then. So, how would you balance supporting day-to-day student activities with delivering long-term sustainability and environmental goals? Let's start from the other end this time, so Kingsley, if you want to start. How would you balance supporting day-to-day student activities with delivering long-term sustainability and environmental goals?
Are we talking about like just in like the society activities section?
Society activities in general.
So a bunch of the groups right now, they have their own budgets. They can apply for something called an SMF, where they can get funding from the SU. But because of the fact that students have to run their own budgets, a lot of societies end up saying, oh look, Timu has like, I don't know, paper plates, disposable plastics, were so cheap. We'll get those for our events instead. So it's a bit interesting that they get pushed to unsustainable methods due to budgeting constraints. So I would probably try to consider getting like a set of plates, cutlery, or some really like normal day-to-day things they would have to need, so that they would borrow it instead. So it's less costly on them, but it's also just they start producing less waste as a result.
Okay, brilliant. Do we have any challenges on that? What about other sustainability measures? You've mentioned like plates, cutlery. What else do you think the university can support resource-wise?
Sustainability-wise, there is also a bit of a concern for me about how cleanup is dealt with by society sometimes for large events. Obviously, it depends on the committee, it depends on how it's run, but the fact that it's not consistent, there's no quality control over, oh, you booked this room, now you've left a bunch of trash in it. It's a bit of a concern. They haven't also sometimes maybe planned out proper bin space for the amount of trash they're creating. So there's a bunch of sustainability problems where they should sort their trash out as well instead of just binning it like in one bag.
Any further challenges? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
So I think one of the things of balancing the day-to-day with sustainability is, in my manifesto I've mentioned potentially introducing a sustainability liaison within the activities exec, just so that there is someone that is overseeing, that there are so many green initiatives that a lot of different student groups are already leading. So having that person that is in charge of just making sure that there's support for that, but also continuing, the current activities officer has introduced a sort of SU sustainable action plan, so continuing to implement that, as well as taking on board student feedback to make adjustments as seen appropriate, and finally also working with groups like People and Planet to potentially have separate ethical employability career fair, where we have things like fossil fuel careers, and also just networking with sustainable organisations for students, having that as an opportunity.
And do we have any challenges in that? How would you ensure that all groups are following the same set of sustainability guidelines?
I mean, the SU Sustainable Action Plan, I think the idea is that that would put some guidelines in place. Having that sustainability liaison also, just to make sure that within the activities exec there is someone that's actually looking at the green elements of the events and campaigns that different societies put on.
Any further questions on that? Okay, then we'll move on to Ellie.
Yes, this is one of my main things. Sustainability is very important for the activities officer. I agree that there should be an official position for a sustainability, I would call it a committee. I would want multiple climate conscious students to be able to give me and the rest of the student officers their input on how we can be more sustainable as a university. I think we need to reduce our scope 3 emissions, which is our indirect carbon emissions. So this would be through our investments and all of our secondary ways we are harming the environment. We also need to make sure that SU events are using more sustainable things. So I agree, we have some kind of set of things we can use, or using biodegradable things instead of single-use plastics.
Do we have any challenges with that? Let's go to Nata first.
You mentioned about certain activities and SU reducing carbon emissions and things, which is a fair point. I'm just wondering how you would actually, what do you think should be done to go back to that?
Yeah, so it's how who the university is associating itself with. So, like you said, an alternative careers fair would be an amazing way to do this, so that university students have more accessibility to alternative careers and ways that they can be sustainable.
Kinsey?
You mentioned some biodegradable stuff, which is obviously a choice when you can't get things that can be reused over and over again. But that is quite a burden financially onto the societies, and if you're just starting out, I believe they give you £50, but then that's the freshers fair, you have to go plan for that, give out freebies. So how would you make it so that they can actually afford these biodegradable things?
If the SU wants to be more sustainable, then the student groups need to be more sustainable, and if we want the groups to be more sustainable, then I think we would provide them with some money so that they can be sustainable and ensure that the SU is important.
Brilliant. Moving on to Nick then. How would you balance supporting day-to-day student activities with delivering long-term sustainability and environmental goals?
I don't think we necessarily need to balance pushing for sustainability and data activities. I feel they can be pushed into one. I think a good point about ensuring student groups know how to be more sustainable. Obviously, everyone engages really well with SU training. I think we could definitely push for better training on that side. But sustainability training through that is definitely one way. Long-term sustainability goals we have already in place thanks to our current activities officer. We've got the SU action plan, the university's goals, We also have, on the student side of stuff, we've got the Sustainability Student Forum, which is pushing to make student voices heard already for sustainability. So I feel like pushing to ensure those are being followed up as well, and also including the voices of the students as a priority, especially groups such as People's Planet, Green Path Group. There's definitely a way to go through it, making sure that all our groups are sustainable.
Brilliant. Any challenges, questions on that front? How do you plan to make this information accessible to all students?
One thing I discovered whilst looking this stuff up is like it's difficult to find. I think a lot of the different sustainability kind of pages on the SU website are very spread out. One of the things in my manifesto is to centralize a lot of the SU resources and information. So I think kind of doing this for each department or area, so having a more central page for sustainability is definitely one way to go about it, and kind of having everything branch out from there if need be, and also eliminating any conflicting things.
Brilliant. Any challenges? Okay, go on, Paisley.
You're talking about like a mini section on the page for sustainability in general. But I believe a lot of the students, when they just start, they do look at the SU page. But when you go on throughout the years, you just stop giving as much of a care, because nowadays people don't even know what the What's On page has. So how would you make it more visible if students aren't actively seeking it themselves? Because we do need to push on this matter.
I think one of the great visibility things that the SU has been doing already is pushing the weekly updates from the officers. And I think, obviously, activities officer will be updating about sustainability in the first place. I think pushing the marketing team and having more updates generally about sustainability throughout the Instagram, emails, all that kind of stuff is one way to get to the students. I think otherwise engaging activity would be through facilitating students to organize their own events and making those events like publicized and advertised.
Okay, brilliant. So that's that first challenges. Emily, if you'd like to answer.
I agree with a lot of these points. I am last, so that's fine. I would say that a lot of the things that were raised were actually points in my manifesto. So one of them being TZ, so like borrowing and sharing equipment rather than buying. I think this is really important, and I think it would be a really cool idea to have a Bath library of things within the SU. So societies could have an idea of what other groups are using, or for example not using at that time, and then ask to borrow within that. So that would help with like the circularity of the equipment and the things we have in the SU. Besides that, I do think there should be some dedicated funding for societies to be more sustainable. Whether that's embedded in, so we have a new, it's called the SU like Sustainability Awards. There's a lot of new things this year for sustainability, so that's a big win for our Memory Award. But I think definitely pushing those a lot more into the coming academic year, because they sort of joined this semester, so having something from the start next year.
I'm going to have to. Okay. Any challenges on that? Okay. How would you go about funding this library of things, funding this extra sustainability funding?
I think so. Obviously, this is quite a long-term goal, quite a big project. Funding-wise, to begin with, I think it's to do with auditing what societies have. I don't think it would actually cost that much money to sort of ask societies what they had, student groups, students themselves, and from there, it would in theory be a deposit system. So I don't think there would. I think the costs would be pretty low for this, and the funding of the library is not particularly a major concern for it, I don't think.
Thank you. Let's go to Ellie. Let's go to Ellie.
I love this idea. I love that it's called a library of things. Is this a single space that holds things, or is this societies have things and other people can have things?
So this is actually a good point. I don't want to clarify it very well. I think long term it would be really good to have space, but I know that the SU is really tight for that storage and event space. So I think in general it'd be a good idea to have like a catalogue. So potentially just somewhere online, or I mean I guess you have paper, online version where you can search and you can see what's available. So I think not physical space to like currently. Yeah, it's a long time goal hopefully.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, that's everyone. So we'll move on to the next question here, which is, when you're representing students on university committees, how would you ensure that student views genuinely influence decisions? I'm trying my best. When representing students on university committees, how would you ensure that student views genuinely influence decisions? I'll try and spread it out to more of you, start in random places. So we'll start with Nick. If you just
I think the best way to represent student views is, of course, talking to them first. I think before going to any of these committees, having a good understanding of what it is the student wants to be able to actually represent it is the first point. A lot of this can be done through things like Sustainability Forum, where students are involved anyways. The Activities Exec Committee, where we'll get feedback from all of our groups collected into that one place. And then ensuring that once we've got all that information put together, how can we present it in a way that will be communicated well, and then also in a way that the university would accept and want to do it.
Any challenges on that? We'll just move on then to Ellie then.
Yes, this is a very good question. Thank you. As I mentioned before, I want to have an annual general meeting for all student groups. This is a great way to hear in person what the student groups need. I also think there's a way, and I don't know what to call it yet, it needs a sense, but it would be some kind of IMC, individual mitigating circumstance form, for societies. If a society needs one more than the max amount of committee members, they can give us their evidence, they can give us their reason why, and we can provide them with that. I think that would be a great way to ensure that all societies and student groups get what they need.
Do we have any challenges on that? Yeah, go on, Kinsey.
What you're talking about is generally the committees meeting up with you. But how would you be able to ensure something like not passing on of you would occur in between the students and you? Because the committee are standing in the middle, and well, obviously we would trust them to not do something bad. They could just not say a point because they don't believe in it. What would stop them from doing so?
So you're asking how I would ensure that individual student voices are heard rather than just the committee's views. Yes, I think that's a very difficult point. We cannot listen to every single student individually. There is something to be said about a survey being given out. I don't think it'd be engaged with all that well. Honestly, my answer is I would hope that the committees are telling us what their societies need and what their individual students need.
Okay, let's move on to Yetta.
Could you repeat the original question, please?
Okay, when representing students on university committees, how would you ensure student views genuinely influence decisions?
So I think in terms of the committees, things like, which has been said, the activities exec, I think is a really good mediating layer. But I think also giving more practical and welfare support to the committee members so that they can actually carry out their sort of role to the best that they can do. I think because of workload, it can often happen that societies just don't have time to make things like the committee, a meeting that's held for everyone, and also like fill out these forms. And there are so many forms to fill. So actually alleviating some of their practical things, and also potentially having some sort of support group for leaders to just meet up and chat about ideas and how they're finding things.
Brilliant. Any challenges? Yeah, go on, Nick.
Can I quickly clarify? When you say university committees, do you mean like higher up stuff, like board of trustees kind of level?
I believe it just generally means committees, so from lower down all the way up to the top of like board of trustees, how do you make sure that that view is carried through?
So I guess the actual question is, obviously we talked a lot about how we're going to interact with student committees. How would you then bring it up to a higher level, like board of trustees or speaking to the university directly?
I think having some sort of universal sort of SU guidelines means that a sort of general view is carried out throughout all the levels, but also, as sort of activities officer, you will be in the higher level rooms where you can speak to the sort of larger board of trustees and I guess just making sure that what's communicated is just communicated throughout transparency throughout the levels.
Okay. Let's move to Emily.
Just keep me on my toes, that's fine. Okay, so how would keep students actually represented? So I'd say a big issue here is that obviously we have individual students and then we have societies and then we have committees and then we have committees and we have more committees. So I think it's really just tailoring how you're getting this information to each specific group and each specific person, and that sounds like a lot and that's a lot of nitpicky things, but I think individually just listening to a student and just being visible as an activities officer, just being around, being like we have drop-in sessions for arts and creation. There are things in place that I think that do work. I think that's quite successful. And it's just that in combination with a lot of other things like AGMs, that's really good. Forms as well have their place. I think it's just, we just try all these different things to then cover all the different gaps, and then that will get you information that you can then just take to committees, to the higher up ones, basically, with just awareness that you are acting as a special officer. So for the students, like while you are technically staff, you're still very much on the student side. So yeah.
Okay. Any challenges with that? How do you integrate all of these different ways of getting feedback from students? So you like the idea of the audience, you like the idea of these forms. How do you make sure that all of these are like integrated together and all the information is taken into account?
I understand that it's confusing that there would be a lot of different things going on in what I described. I do think there's something about the fact that they don't necessarily need to be integrated because they are distinct things for particular groups of people. So I think you should only be, I think you're sending things out to, like, for example, committees, they have their own inbox, they're not, feedback like that goes to and from them is only going in that channel, and society members we can use, or students as a whole, use social media for that. Yeah, it's just different channels, and they don't necessarily have to be integrated into the same way, because that can get confusing.
Okay, yeah. Any other challenges here? Okay, Kingsley, do you want to answer the question?
Could you just repeat the question?
No worries, it's a lot of people. When representing students on university committees, how would you ensure student views genuinely influence decisions?
Okay, I mean, I definitely banged on about forms a lot, but hearing, all the other points about all the different points of contact we could have, that is a pretty good idea. But what I really want to do as well to make sure that the opinions don't change is I want to put a bit of pressure on myself. after we get all of these data points or whatever comments, I want to publish them to the entire student body. If we miss something, they can go tell us. It is absolutely fine. I will be held accountable if I make a mistake. My bad, I'm a human. But I feel like if we make it clear that we got told all these different points from all these different people, and everyone else has their eyes on us, then it's easier to make sure the voices aren't lost somewhere in between, because everyone then will hold us accountable, and student voices as a whole are really powerful.
Any challenges on that front? Ellie?
What would the publication of feedback, what would that look like?
Well, I mean, the university currently has like a bunch of different ways to publicize the SU page, the social medias, emails. I feel like a lot of students probably only check one or check neither, but it is pretty good to get the voice out there in as many channels as you can, even if it's like physically going around saying, hey guys, look, we've got this done, please hold us accountable. I feel like there's enough of a student need, and if they feel strongly enough, they'll actually like pay attention, they'll hold us accountable. It'll be like genuinely a good experience.
Unless we have any further challenges, we'll move on to what I think is the last question here. So, in striving to make campus a welcoming place for most students, do you believe in students having a right to associate, even if it's around controversial causes such as Turning Point UK or Reform UK? Why do you believe this? We'll start with Rita. In striving to make campus a welcoming place for most students, do you believe in students having a right to associate, even if it's around controversial causes such as Turning Point UK or Reform UK, and why?
I think that there's a difference between having sort of hate speech and views that sort of harm other students, and just having your own sort of political views. I think in my manifesto I actually did mention that I think the SU should push for push students to vote in wider elections as well as the SU ones, just being more involved in politics, and pushing students to remember that their vote does matter and can change things. Yeah.
Any further questions on that? Okay, but how about this right to associate? Do you think that student groups should exist for these causes that most people may not agree with or may be controversial?
I mean, we do have different political student groups already, ranging a wide scope within the political spectrum. As I said, I think there is a difference between sort of having a left society or a conservative society and having a student group that directly harms other student groups.
Brilliant. Let's move on to Nick.
I absolutely believe that any kind of group has the right to associate. I think when they do associate, they become a group under the SU and therefore have to abide by SU guidelines. And that will automatically, I guess, prevent them, at least to a degree, from doing anything hateful or going against like the SU guidelines. If they do go against them, they'll be disciplined as simple as. Every voice has the right to be heard. People can say what they would like. Obviously, the reaction to that is then based on other people. Our university is quite vocal. I think if we heard something that we didn't like, we would push back against it. Yeah, that's about it.
Any challenges in that? Okay, let's go to Emily on this one.
Good point. Yeah, I agree. I think I think in general students absolutely have the right to sort of centre around issues that they think are important to them. But yeah, obviously there are lines to this, and it's not just a blanket statement for anyone to get involved and say whatever they like. Yeah, so I just think there's a difference between students having the right to form a group and whether that group should exist. Because I think that you phrased the question like that, and I think yes, it really does depend, and I think there is a line, and SU guidelines do protect that. So any group is welcome to have a go, but if it is going to impact the wider student community in a negative way, then obviously they will have they probably won't be allowed to continue.
Any challenges in that? We'll move on to Kenzie then.
Um, well, the uni really, well, the SU and the uni together really like saying they're very inclusive, they want people's opinions. And I feel like that should stand, where, oh, you know, if you have this opinion, yes, you can express it. But there's a difference between acting on it and actually just thinking about it. Where there is something where if no one gets harmed, sure, it could be harmful to the individuals themselves, where they dig themselves into a hole where it's just like an echo chamber, obviously. But it's a point where you can do your own actions, but we're thinking for the best of you. So if we decide it's literally going to like go against like your health, it's going to be negatively impacting the uni in general, I feel like we would have a right to just step in and say, no, absolutely not, which is basically what Emily said in the first place. Yeah.
Brilliant. Any challenges in that? We'll move on to Ali then.
I'm very glad that we are all in agreement on this point. Yes, there are guidelines in place, so if they want to exist, they have to abide by those. But hatred is not conducive to a strong community, and so if they're being hateful, if they're being harmful, then no, they shouldn't exist. But they should just be allowed to start to exist. Thank you.
Questions on that? What we'll do is closing statements now, just to make sure we're on time. So we'll just go down the line again. I'll give you guys a minute, around a minute, but I'm not going to cut you off super strictly. So we'll start with Emily then.
Thank you guys for all coming to this debate, first of all. It's a really big group and I'm really happy to see everyone here. I just want to say that I'm running for activities officer because I think activities are such an important part of student life, and I think that sometimes groups, they're supposed to be fun, and I think sometimes they're kind of like stressful, like a part-time job, like Yeti was saying, and I'm just here to put the fun back into activities. And that's it. Vote for me, please.
Yeah. The communities built by our activities and all our societies groups are the core that builds our SU. I think being able to access communities, see people that you agree with and people you can relate to is really what provides a sense of belonging at our university. I'd love to be able to continue providing and helping that. And I think one of the key barriers to that right now is always administrative processes and time, because a lot of time we're spending, like committees are spending hours trying to fill in forms too much. We should just be enjoying ourselves. And a key part of that as well is hearing student voices to know what's going on, what's taking too much time. And so really to help out the best way I can, I want to listen directly to students and try and make any changes I can to better our university and our SU.
Yes, I think we're going to share them. Yes, thank you guys for coming. Like Emily said, I'm so glad we got to have this discussion. I'm Ellie, and I want to be your activities officer because I want all of your voices to be heard, and student groups and being an activities officer is, again, one of the main parts of the student union. And so if I can amplify your voice and make sure that you are heard, I would feel so fulfilled. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
So yeah, in terms of why I'm running and what I'm about. It's in the slogan, Yeta for Better. I'm not here to like reinvent what's already working. I want to have some continuation, but I want to make things better. Having better sustainability, recognition in societies and society spaces. Especially emphasising, I think, support for volunteering groups, which has potentially been slightly put to the side over the last few years, and definitely being in a volunteering group, I've seen, and more support for student leaders, so that everyone can find their community, and that community can actually thrive within a fully supported space.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cindy. Like everyone else here, I'm running for activities. Oh, what a shocker. I am considering myself like an all or nothing person. So I'm going into this role fully knowing well I'm probably going like more than 100%. I've already prepared myself to dedicate literally my entire year to the cause. And I feel like you don't really, well, obviously this is very short. You don't see the whole of us go check us all out, obviously. But I would encourage you to at least vote. The turnover last year was a bit depressing when I saw the stats. And I feel like that's not representing everyone. The quiet voices, they want to be heard. They have good reasoning sometimes as well, most of the times actually. But I want everyone to actually start voting, moving for what they feel like. Read the manifestos, don't just skim. Make an informed decision, please, I beg you. Thank you.
Thank you guys.